Welcome to NFL Talk. The Vikings are sitting at 7-2 right now, holding the number 5 seed in the NFC playoff picture.
Yeah, they're in a good spot.
But this week, they're going up against the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
And there's been some uncertainty about a couple of key players and whether or not they'd be suited up.
Yeah, there was a lot of concern earlier this week about quarterback Sam Darnold and running back Aaron Jones.
Right.
Both of them were limited in practice with those nagging injuries.
I was going to say, it must be a big sigh of relief for Vikings fans that both Darnold and Jones are good to go for Week 11.
Absolutely.
What does this mean for the team?
It's huge. You know, Darnold is coming off a rough game against Jacksonville,
Right.
where he threw 3 interceptions. So getting him back on track and playing with confidence is going to be crucial.
Yeah.
If the Vikings want to maintain that offensive momentum.
And Aaron Jones adds a whole other dimension to this offense, both as a rusher and a receiver.
Right.
I imagine having him at full strength makes a big difference to their game plan.
Absolutely. But, you know, we can't forget about the bigger picture here.
Right.
The Vikings are in a good spot at 7-2.
Yeah.
92% chance at making the playoffs.
Yeah.
However, their current seeding would put them in a tough wild card game on the road against the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, so this game against the Titans, this is a big one.
Huge.
Not just for solidifying their playoff spot, but also for potentially improving their seeding and maybe even getting a home playoff game.
Every win counts from here on out.
Right.
And speaking of the future, there's been some news about rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy.
That's right. He recently underwent a second knee surgery.
He did.
It's a setback,
Huh.
but thankfully his recovery timeline remains the same.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the Vikings quarterback situation, both for the rest of this season and looking ahead to next year?
Well, it definitely adds another layer of complexity, especially considering Sam Darnold is only on a 1-year deal right now.
Right.
There's a lot of speculation about whether or not he'll even be back in Minnesota next season.
Yeah, I've seen the rumors. Swirling experts are saying that Darnold might not return, with several teams being mentioned as potential landing spots.
Sure.
The Titans, the Panthers, the Colts, the Raiders, the Browns,
Wow.
even a return to the Jets.
Yeah.
What factors do you think will influence his decision?
Oh, it's tough to say for sure. Obviously, his performance this season will be a major factor.
Of course.
If he can bounce back from last week's game and lead the Vikings on a deep playoff run, that would certainly increase his value on the open market. But, you know, there's other things to consider, too.
Sure.
You know, does he feel comfortable in Minnesota?
Right.
What's the team's offensive scheme looking like?
Right.
And, of course, the money's got to be right.
Right. So while McCarthy recovers, Darnold's basically auditioning for his next contract.
Absolutely.
And his performance against the Titans this week will be a big part of that audition.
Yeah, he needs to show teams that he can be a reliable, consistent quarterback.
Right.
Who can win big games. But, you know, let's not lose sight of the fact that the Vikings need the Titans. Right.
This week to improve their playoff positioning.
The Vikings have a good track record against the AFC South.
They do.
But the Titans are always a tough physical team. What are some of the key matchups you'll be watching?
Well, the Titans' defense is known for its strong front seven.
Yeah.
Their D-line has some real playmakers.
For sure.
Who can cause some havoc in the backfield. So the Vikings' offensive line will need to be at their best.
Right.
To protect Darnold and open up some running lanes for Jones.
So the battle in the trenches is going to be critical.
Yeah.
What about the Vikings receivers against the Titans secondary? I know Minnesota has some pretty talented pass catchers.
They do, but the Titans have a solid group of defensive backs as well.
Okay.
You know, they're capable of making plays on the ball, so this is going to be a classic battle of strengths versus strength.
So how can the Vikings come out on top in this matchup? What's the key to their success?
Well, in my opinion, the Vikings need to establish the run game early.
Okay.
Take some of that pressure off of Darnold. Yeah. If they can control the line of scrimmage and get Jones going, that'll open up opportunities in the passing game.
And if Darnold can avoid those costly turnovers that plagued him last week, it sounds like the Vikings have a real chance to secure a crucial win on the road.
I agree. This game has huge implications for the Vikings as they look to lock up a playoff spot and potentially improve their seeding.
Yeah.
It's a game you won't want to miss.
Well said.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about what a potential Darnold departure could mean for the Vikings salary cap situation.
That's an interesting point. You know, if Darnold signs elsewhere, the Vikings would likely have more financial flexibility to address other needs on their roster.
Okay.
Potentially through free agency or trades.
So while losing Darnold's experience might be a short-term setback, it could open up opportunities to improve other areas of the team in the long run.
Precisely. It's all about finding the right balance between short-term competitiveness and building for sustained success. And that's what makes this offseason so intriguing for the Vikings. They have some big decisions to make regarding their quarterback position, and how they allocate their resources. It's exciting to think about what J.J. McCarthy could bring to the team once he's fully recovered from his knee surgery. He was drafted to be the franchise quarterback, and Vikings fans are eager to see what he can do.
There's definitely a lot of anticipation surrounding McCarthy. You know, he has the potential to be a dynamic player in this league, and it'll be interesting to see how he develops over the next.
But for now, the focus remains on this week's game against the Titans.
Yeah.
A win would be a huge step towards securing their playoff aspiration. What are your final thoughts on this?
I think it's going to be a close, hard-fought game. You know, the Titans always play the Vikings tough.
Yeah.
And this one will be no different, but I believe in this Vikings team. I think they have the talent and the coaching to win this game, continue their push toward.
It'll be interesting to see if Darnold can silence some of the critics with a strong performance against the Titans.
Yeah, he certainly has a point to prove, especially with all the speculation about his future. This game could be a showcase for him to remind everyone of his talent and potential, maybe even sway his decision about staying in Minnesota.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The focus needs to be on this Sunday's game.
Absolutely. One game at a time. That's the mentality that's gotten them to 7-2.
Well said. I'm excited to see how it all unfolds.
Me too. It's going to be a great game. He needs to make smart decisions with the football and avoid those turnovers that hurt them last week. If he can do that and manage the game effectively, I think the Vikings have a good shot at winning.
So you're saying even if Darnold doesn't have a spectacular game, just a steady performance could be enough to get the job done?
Exactly. Sometimes the best thing a quarterback can do is just not make mistakes and let the other players on the team do their jobs.
And the Vikings have plenty of playmakers on both sides of the ball.
They do. Justin Jefferson is one of the best wide receivers, and Dalvin Cook is a proven running back, and their defense has been playing really well.
Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the Vikings' long-term plans at quarterback. We know J.J. McCarthy is the future, but he's coming off that second knee surgery. What's your take on his recovery and his potential?
It's obviously a concern when a young quarterback has to go through multiple surgeries early in his career. But the good news is that his recovery timeline hasn't changed. He's still expected to be ready for the start of next season.
So we probably won't see him on the field this year.
It's unlikely, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It gives him a chance to fully recover, learn the playbook, and adjust to the speed of the NFL without the pressure of having to play right away.
And it allows Darnold to showcase his abilities and potentially earn another contract, whether it's with the Vikings or another team.
Right. And if Darnold does move on in the offseason, it could open up some salary cap space for the Vikings to address other needs.
What are some of the areas where the Vikings could look to improve in the offseason?
Well, I think their offensive line could use some reinforcements. You know, they've been solid this season, but they've also given up a lot of sacks. And their secondary could use some depth. They've been susceptible to big plays.
So potentially signing a top-tier offensive lineman or drafting a shutdown cornerback could be on the agenda.
Exactly. But those decisions will likely depend on how the rest of the season plays out and how their salary cap sits.
It's fascinating to see how all these different factors are interconnected. A win against the Titans this week could have ripple effects that extend far beyond just this season. It could impact Darnold's future, McCarthy's development, and the Vikings' overall strategy for the next few years.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
Speaking of McCarthy, what kind of player do you think he can be once he's healthy and ready to take over the reins?
Well, he was a highly touted prospect coming out of college. You know, he's got a strong arm, good mobility, and a lot of potential. But we have to remember that potential doesn't always translate to success in the NFL.
So it's too early to say if he'll be a star.
It is. But I'm excited to see what he can do. He's got the tools to be a successful quarterback in this league. And I think he's landed in a good situation in Minnesota with a strong supporting cast and a coaching staff that believes it.
It seems like the Vikings are in a good position regardless of what happens with. They've got a young quarterback waiting in the wings who could be the future of the franchise. And if Darnold plays well and leads them to the playoffs, it only strengthens their position.
I agree. They've got options, and options are always a good thing in the NFL.
Let's get back to this week's game. We talked about the key matchups and the importance of winning for the Vikings' playoff hopes. What's one specific thing you'll be watching for in this game that could be a deciding factor?
I'll be watching to see how the Vikings handle the Titans' pass rush. The Titans have one of the best defensive lines in the league, and they can really get after the quarterback. If the Vikings can protect Arnold and give him time to throw, they'll have a good chance to win. But if the Titans can consistently pressure Donald and force him into mistakes, it could be a long day for the Vikings offense.
So the offensive line's performance will be crucial.
Absolutely. They're going to need to be at their best against a very Titans front set.
What about the Titans' offense? What are their strengths and how can the Vikings' defense neutralize them?
The Titans' offense revolves around their running back, Derrick Henry. He's one of the most physically dominant running backs in the league, and he can wear down defenses with powerful running style. The Vikings will need to be disciplined in their run fits and gang tackle Henry to limit his effectiveness.
So stopping Henry is priority number one for the Vikings.
It has to. If they can't slow him down, it's going to be tough for them.
It sounds like this game could come down to a battle of wills between the Vikings' offensive line and the Titans' defensive line.
It very well could. It's going to be a physical, hard-fought game.
Any other thoughts on this matchup before we wrap things up?
I think the Vikings need to play with a sense of urgency. They've got a lot to play for this season, and this is a big game for them. They can't afford to come out flat.
They need to treat this game like a playoff game. Well, I think we've covered just about everything.
It's been a great discussion.
I always enjoy talking Vikings football with you.
Me too.
Any final predictions for the game?
I think it's going to be a close one, but I'm going to give the Vikings the edge. I think their offense will be able to make enough plays to win.
I'll be watching closely to see if your prediction comes true.
Me too. Yeah, it should be a great game to watch.
Absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see how Darnold responds to the pressure. This is a big game for him personally with so much uncertainty surrounding his future.
Yeah, you're right. A strong performance against a tough Titans defense, like I've been talking about, could go a long way. Boosting his confidence and showing potential suitors what he's capable of.
And on the flip side, a poor performance could raise even more questions about his ability to be a consistent starting quarterback in this league.
No doubt about it. This game is a huge opportunity for Darnold to prove himself and potentially earn a lucrative contract in the offseason.
Speaking of contracts, let's talk about the Vikings salary cap. They have a number of key players hitting free agency this offseason, including Darnold. How much flexibility do they have to make moves and retain their core players?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tight squeeze.
Okay.
They're currently projected to be slightly over the salary cap, so they'll need to make some tough decisions. They could restructure some contracts, release some players, or let some free agents walk.
So it's possible they could lose some key contributors if they can't create enough cap space.
It's definitely a possibility. It'll be interesting to see how they approach the offseason and what their priorities are.
It seems like they have a lot of options, but also a lot of tough decisions.
That's the nature of the business.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'll be watching for in this game that we haven't already discussed?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the Vikings' young receivers step up. Justin Jefferson is obviously their #1 target.
Right.
But they need other guys to contribute as well. KJ Osborne and Adam Thielen have shown flashes of brilliance, but they need to be more consistent.
So you're looking for a balanced offensive attack from the Vikings.
Exactly. If they can get production from multiple receivers, it'll make them much harder to defend.
All right, that's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining me today for this look at the Vikings Week 11 matchup against the Titans.
It was my pleasure. Always enjoy talking football with you.
Goodbye, and see you in the next video.